Terrific. All right, then we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Thank you very much. And if you're able, please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States and to for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Item 1.03 is approval of the agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
Properly motioned and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? Chair votes aye as well. Motion passes. 1.04 is input from the public, if any. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move forward. Before we go too much forward, I just want to let folks know over the next 2 or 3 meetings, including tonight, you'll see a little bit of a reorganization of the agenda. And so there will be some things that move around a little bit. In the interest of more transparency, the consent agenda has now been moved into the left side of the agenda that we use so that it's more searchable. So just want to let folks know that. But otherwise, it is still the basic approach to the consent agenda. It's also, of course, been moved up into the beginning of the meeting so that if there's anything removed out of the consent agenda, we can then carry it over into the discussion and action items section. So with that, the consent agenda is open for action.
Move to approve. Second.
All right, thank you very much. Mr. Jeff, Dr. Josh, any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye as well. Motion passes. 3.01 is going to be paused for just a moment, and we're going to be moving to 3.02, which is receipt, review, and possible action of proposed revisions to policy JDBA, student discipline, rules of behavior, use and possession by pupils of personal electronic devices. This is for possible action, and it's the second meeting.
Yep. So back in June, we did go through a reading of this. I think it was the 17th, and then the turnaround to the 24th was a little too close to make it happen. But we have it back here. There was a robust discussion that day, and some of those suggestions have been are highlighted in the new, the one that's called red line. You can see those. And the one called second read would be the clean version of the red line. So what was changed was the addition of the, so there's an NRS that was included at the top. On the second page under 3.1, the language for usage of personal electronic devices and social media on district property for elementary schools was, we had the language of prohibited from use on campus during school hours. Otherwise, as it read before, it would mean never, ever, for always and eternity, ever on campus. So that didn't make a whole lot of sense. So we added that. And then under the last section 6, under discipline, just some more language there to kind of hit home the importance of a consistent and uniform approach to the enforcement of and observation of this policy at every site level. So, oh, and then also a little bit of taking away of the kind of confusion of which policies, and just really more of a reference to the handbooks and the discipline matrix, which are what we use to guide those discipline decisions, depending on the severity of the scenario. So those were the changes that were made from last time. If anyone has any questions or further comments.
Thank you. Dr. Josh, do you want to start with the information you provided?
Sure, I will. So I just wanted to make sure we had some data. Some of it's anecdotal on here, but just data from other districts. And I will say to compile it, I did use AI. So, but I got it together in a clean, concise way. So that'll be part of this. But most of the data shows a drop. Well, first of all, restriction methods were everything from pouches to not being on, that there were districts that removed them at different age levels, or excuse me, different grade levels. Some went so far as to say they had to be switched off. There are restrictions for smartwatches and even smart glasses, because those are a hot new item. And then they went into kind of the reduction. Like I said, some of the reduction is anecdotal, where teachers say, hey, people, or students were more engaged, those types of things. Socialization was up. And then some of them did go into percentages where they had actually tracked that as well. So I just want to give the board just kind of a clean, concise way to look at it, rather than just going, hey, we think we should do this. So do you want me to go over things I have on the, there's this.
Since the mic is yours, you're welcome
Okay.
to continue with.
Yeah, I'll
other
just do it
comments.
just for the sake of keeping moving forward. So I did have a couple questions. I apologize, I wasn't at the meeting where we went over this. I believe I was suffering at Walt Disney World. So, I suffer for the community. And so I apologize that I wasn't here, but I did want to throw out part 4. It's just the second sentence there, just a little grammar. We're missing with, or however you want to do that. I think it just got deleted. So that's the easy one. In that same section at the end, the use of personal electronic devices, so it does restrict it, can only be permitted. It's for school-sponsored travel. It says permitted by administrators or teachers. My question is, how does that work for coaches that aren't necessarily teachers? Or is that like it's permitted by an administrator that is the AD? And then, so I don't want to get too in the minutia, but I also was like, what are we doing there? So.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we need to get more specific. I think just basically,
Question.
I think it's okay. The
It'll
spirit
cover
of it is
most
there.
people.
A responsible adult for the group is going to
Yeah.
be the one who
Okay.
makes that determination. But I guess if you feel the board feels it's very important to specify there could be a lot of other options though. It could be coach, it could be sponsor, there may be like 7 or 8 words we need to put in there if we want to encompass everyone. And so, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think an
That's the whole reason
administrator-
I asked that. I
Yeah,
was
I
like,
think an
okay.
administrator could authorize a coach
A
to
coach
to
to
make
say,
the same
okay.
decision.
And that's what
Yeah.
that's what I eventually thought, but I just want to make sure, just confirm. Back on part 2 with applicability, do we want to add smart glasses to it? I know that this kind of says electronics or any peripheral device, and we could name a ton of stuff, but right now smart glasses are the hot new thing. And so I don't know. But although that does fall under recording devices too as well. So anyways, okay, just a thought. My other thing though was kind of bigger was in part 5 where it just says at all times when personal electronic devices use is prohibited as determined by teacher and or administrator. My overall thought on this was, is this not the same policy we already have? In which case we have reports of it not necessarily being followed. And I know that we have the fine in part 6. We have, it's the employee's affirmative obligation to follow this. Is there, I guess it's trouble for me, the way that it looks, that it almost nullifies the policy with that line. And so I guess my question is, how are we nullifying, like, hey, a teacher that just doesn't want to do it?
So I think the idea there is in the previous section under exception, we've just listed specific times when it is
Okay.
appropriate and when, as determined by a teacher and or administrator. And so that's almost like a reiteration of that. When there are times when it is prohibited and other times when it's not. And so, yeah, there are situations or for legitimate instructional purposes or whatever, like there are times. And so I think that's kind of what that's referring to is as determined by.
Okay.
But we've outlined that already for the teacher and or administrator, that these are the things that are acceptable and allowances, whereas nothing else mentioned or unmentioned would be.
Okay. Thank you. The last question I had, and again, I'm not trying to indicate or dictate how the district is going to push or how each site will do this, but will it fall kind of, and I know you guys just got this, but will it kind of fall into the spectrum of kind of everything that we've seen in other districts there, where it's like, hey, turn it off, put it in a backpack, yonder pouches or those type of scenarios? Or is it going to be more kind of what we've already seen?
Are you talking
Moving
about like
forward.
under the restriction method column?
Yeah, so like the restriction method on, on here, this just makes it easy to visualize, but yeah, just the different things, smartwatches and backpacks are off or those types of things. I just want to get a general idea of it. I've had a lot of questions about it and I just want to be able to answer. This is the spectrum you can see, or are you guys still kind of working on?
So the intention was to leave it to the individual sites to determine the process by which those are stored and put away. We don't have an intention of purchasing the pouches for across the whole district. I think we kind of looked at that and the costs that would be and determine that. So I suppose an individual school could, if they wanted to expend limited funds that they have to purchase yonder pouches, then they certainly
Okay.
could. But that's not the intention. Whereas I think in one of the prior paragraphs, it said something along the lines of just basically that
Locker,
the teacher and
backpack, teacher,
they will
pouch,
have a
designated area.
designated
Yes,
secure
that's what- yeah.
space that would be determined by the teacher and the administrator. So that's going to be depending on the school, because not every school has lockers, or even ones that you have them don't use them, and so it leaves room for them to determine the best way to do that at their campus.
Cool.
But it will have to be consistent
For sure.
across the school site.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Final thoughts here. Initially when I looked at the policy, I didn't think it was as restrictive as it should be. I've looked at some other stuff and I thought, hey, we just need to get rid of these. But after after collecting data such as we did, and I see that honestly, this policy, based on the data that I've collected, it aligns with most of them. It's a pretty good conglomerate across the board. So ultimately, I think it's a good policy, or it's at least a good start for something that we need to do because it is important. We do, as it states in the beginning, the cell phones are a detriment when not properly used and when not supervised. So I just think it's a good policy. So with that, I will, as Matt says, I'll rest.
Thank you, Dr. Byers. Brooke?
I think everything that I needed or wanted to see addressed has been changed on here, so I'm really happy with that. And I think that it's probably best to have it be up to each school site. I know they all do it a little differently, but like he said, that it is enforced at that school site the same all the way around. So I think that that is a good way to handle it. Yeah, because I know schools are doing it. I know just in some of the schools that I've been to, they are doing it in different ways and they've seen success in different ways at different schools.
Thank you. Teresa?
I appreciate under the exceptions that, it states that if there's a health concern, that it's usable, because I know that's a concern that people have come up with. They said, well, what if, I depend on this for, whatever my health concern might be. So I appreciate that we have that. I have questioned whether the next sentence where it says school administrators and teachers may authorize student personal electronic device use in the event of an emergency. I wonder if it just should say in the event of a school-wide or classroom emergency, personal electronic devices may be used. I just think, you're going to have, if there's a major incident, which we hope we never have, but, we have to think about those things. Do we want kids to be like, oh no, what if I violate the policy and my teacher gets after me? But I can hear that there's something, going on next door. I want to call my parents. I just wonder if we should look at that potentially as, in case of a major emergency, it's okay for you to use your phone. That's all right. So that was just another thought I had. And I know we've kind of talked about how someone might determine an emergency is, it might be very small that they would consider an emergency. So we might need a little more clarification on what constitutes an emergency. But that was just a thought I had on that section.
Thanks, Teresa. Jeff?
The policy looks good to me. I'd like the changes that were made. regarding emergencies and stuff, I think people are gonna do what they're gonna do, regardless of what the policy is. But I think it addresses it in such a way that it's pretty concise from top to bottom. So I like the policy.
Thanks, Jeff. Susan?
I'm glad we have a policy developed for this and look forward to implementing it for the new school year. I would like to see how it goes at the end of the year, if it's made a difference, which I'm hoping it will. I did have a few concerns, but I think they were answered with about, let's say a student says, oh, it's in my car, and someone's like, but you're supposed to put it in the pouch. And I just don't want that part to be more work for a teacher or an administrator. But if a school comes up with their own plan, like we're all going to do one thing or other, that'll work out great. It'll be a little more uniform at the school. So, and I think it's a good start for having a policy in place. And I would just like to review the policy at the end of the year to see if there's any other things we need to add, change, or whatever. And thank you, Josh, for the information. It's good information.
Thank you, Susan. I regret that I also was not available at the last meeting. So this may have already been discussed. Is there a purpose or a need to say phones need to be in off silent airplane mode? Because if they're just at the front of the class and someone is trying to call the student and it just keeps ringing incessantly, then that could be an issue. I regret that I didn't read this well enough in advance to get that going. It was just actually when I saw Josh's thing that it said airport or airplane mode that I thought, oh, that could be an issue. The second thing is in section 3, subsection 2 for intermediate, middle, and junior high school. Is there ever a time where they may have a legitimate instructional purpose at that level? Do we want to add language in there to allow a teacher in 8th grade chemistry to say, hey, look up this thing? that was just one of those other things. I didn't know how consistent electronic devices are at that grade level. I would think it's probably pretty high as far as proportion of people, but students, but I didn't know if that language needed to be added in there as well. Finally, the only other thing that I had was in regards to review, I'd like to actually, see it, maybe a mid-year review, see how this is going and not wait till the end of the year and just make sure that our students and parents know this is actually, in my opinion, a pretty easy policy, and it could always get more restrictive, and reviewing it sooner than the end of the year might be a way to just let folks know, hey, this is not working the way we need to, and let's make some changes. Otherwise, I appreciate the work that was put into it, and I particularly appreciate the very last edit under section 6, discipline, with the new language. So thank you for that. Any further discussion?
I just have one question. So I had, most of my questions last meeting were about the discipline section. And I like the wording on this here, but I just wanted to make sure that there is going to be in that discipline matrix, something specifically for this now, right? So that it's kind of the same across the board for throughout the district.
I've worked with Emily Nielsen, or I guess that makes it sound like I did a lot. Emily Nielsen has put a lot of work into this already and kind of has a draft matrix set up where this has been removed. Because right now we just have like a catch-all that's like misuse of electronic device something. And so we're going to have something that is totally separate for personal electronic device as its own category. And with step 1 is this, step 2 is that, similar in style to the way the rest of it is. So it's already drafted and just kind of waiting on approval. So then by the time we get to meet with all of our admin in 2 weeks, we can say, hey, here's the policy was approved, go over the policy with them, and then say, and here's how the matrix has changed based on that. Now go update all your student handbooks and such, and staff handbooks.
Just a question about, the personal electronic device. Does the Chromebook, which we issue to each student, count as a personal electronic device?
No, that would be, that's a district technology piece, so.
And then I have to say that I do like the idea of going, like possibly reviewing this in a half of a year or, instead of waiting a full year, just because I feel like the benefits that you have from limiting cell phone use in schools or banning it in schools is something that I'd like to see happen in our schools. I think the outcomes would be really great if this was enforced and it worked well. So I liked that idea.
When you say a review, do you mean have an agendized item? This is for everybody, or do you mean have our committee look back over it again that put it together? What are we talking about?
I'm going to jump in on here and please anybody else jump in as well. I was thinking more of just a report coming back of, yes, we're seeing that this is working.
Oh, okay.
We're seeing that this isn't working. Ms. Nielsen can provide that. It can be part of your report. I don't know that the whole committee needs to get back together. Just as a, site to site, do they anecdotally or even statistically show that there has been an improvement?
So maybe consider key data points like instances of bullying, cyberbullying, fights,
Just how
That-
many phones you took away.
yeah, how many were confiscated?
Yeah, if you look at
Infractions of
this,
that kind, because.
I mean, if you look at this, there's a common theme across all of these where they're like, like drop in office referrals, suspensions. Some of them even go so far as violent behaviors or less stress and anxiety, obviously more anecdotal, but if that's something that's a common theme, I guess data plus common themes, I guess would be.
Well, and like Matt said, where he talked about how this is pretty kind of an easy policy. It's not really that restrictive.
Sure.
And if this policy is adopted and students are still continually having issues with their phones at school, we as a board could go back and make this a little bit more
Or restrictive.
There
restrictive.
could be more restrictions. for
Mhm.
sure.
Just so
Okay.
that we can have those benefits of not having the phones in school. to see
So
those
maybe
benefits.
like a review of data, how it's going, and then from there, if we do feel like we need to take a next step of, changing policy again, then we could agendize that later.
Come to
But
that.
start out with a review of data, how it's going mid-year.
I feel like I should piggyback on Brooke on why she means, and I appreciate what you're saying, Brooke, but I don't know that most people don't know that like in Texas, they had up to a 54% reduction in suspensions. I mean, that's half of suspensions, right? So, and they did yonder pouches, right? Powered out of sight, out of mind, enforced by staff. Other ones had, here's another 50% in Connecticut. There's where yonder pouches locked away phones during school hours. So 30 to 40% decline in suspensions, 33% decline in in-office referrals, 75% in decrease. So 86% improved engagement, improved 75% increased socialization. So some of them went so far as to put data against how children are reacting and responding. 51% decrease in drug-related offenses. So I think when you say that, it's important that we let people know, and that's why I tried to compile this list, was that we have actual data that shows it's a huge, huge improvement in schools just by doing this. So, yeah, anyways.
Does that give enough input?
I think so.
Great. Thank you. And for the board, just to let you know, my comments and or suggestions were not indicated or not intended to forestall this policy being passed this evening. I don't know that these need to be added prior to passing this, but it's up to the board completely. So with that, if there's no further discussion, what is the board's pleasure?
I'll make a motion to approve student discipline, rules of behavior, use and possession by pupils of personal electronic devices, JDBA, as written.
Second.
Motion and second, discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Chair votes aye as well. Motion passes. We'll now go to 3.01, receipt and school board evaluation presentation from Balanced Governance Solutions. Dr. Tala Alsbury, please come on up.
Let's see, Thank you. There I go. Thank you very much for having me this evening. Prior to the board meeting tonight, the public should know that the board spent several hours going over, reviewing with me the results of their board evaluation. And tonight I'll present a summary of those findings. The document is available as well to the public, so they can look at the details if they so choose. First, I wanted to congratulate the board for its willingness to participate in an evaluation of this type. Balanced governance is a model of governance for those in the public that don't realize that is predicated upon research over the last 25 years of the most effective boards and what do they do? What standards do they have? What practices do they engage in? How do they run their meetings? And the board has made a commitment to moving forward with that model to improve themselves as a board. And along with that came this very intensive evaluation. So unlike what is typical of most boards nationally, this evaluation is quite intense. It's quite involved. And it took an awful lot of time for the board to participate in it. So again, I would congratulate the board and indicate that I think this is an indication anyway of their openness to self-reflect, self-assess, self-evaluate in a serious way. To that, let me explain the evaluation. The evaluation comes in three parts. The three parts of the evaluation, the first part is a self-assessment where the board is assessing themselves. It's a survey of 81 different indicators and 12 different standards. That evaluation is then benchmarked against national data that we've collected on highly effective boards nationally. So the board has the opportunity, and it is shown in this report, how they stack up against boards just nationally, the general boards performance, as well as boards that are high-performing boards versus poor-performing boards. In addition to that, there is a section of this that reflects not on the whole board, but on individual trustee member practices. So again, and when I say it's an intense evaluation, it's the only evaluation that I know of its kind nationally where board members are willing to self-assess how they're actually doing as an individual trustee. So that was part of this evaluation. And the final part of the evaluation was an external evaluation. That is not an evaluation predicated by the board upon itself, but of other people observing the board, like sort of a 360-degree evaluation process, if you would. In this process, myself and one other researcher, independently observed a selection of board meetings and did an evaluation of every moment of those board meetings. And we benchmarked that against high-performing board meeting practices nationally. So that was the evaluation. So again, like I say, it was quite involved, and it did produce quite a large report. I think some 80+ pages. So let me get to the results. So of course, we won't be able to be going over every detail of that evaluation. But generally, the board, in all three of these phases of the evaluation, there was agreement across that data. So that's the first thing that's important to note. So both the self-evaluations that the board did, again of itself, and of each trustee gave of themselves individually, matched with the evaluation of the data that we had externally and independently as outside observers and researchers. The result of all of those parts of that evaluation was that the board was rated itself as a developing board. There are 4 categories, just to be clear, that the board could have hit. The first one is highly effective. The second was effective. The third was developing, and the last was ineffective. So again, in this case, overall, the board evaluated itself as a board that's developing. Now, when we break that down into individual indicators, individual sections within the evaluation, there were areas that the board performed very well in. They performed effectively. And then there were some areas that the board said that they were in a developing state. As we analyzed all of those, there was a couple of themes that emerged from the evaluation. That is that the areas that the board felt it was doing very well on, and I agree with that, we agree with our external evaluation, is that the board has been engaging in their meetings in a professional way, in a civil way. The conversation is collaborative. This board works together. And the board has effective ratings in terms of its both its balance between building a team, but also speaking its mind for its constituents in the community. And so we found that to be consistent. The area that the board and we felt could use some areas of improvement have to do with what's happening within the context of their board meetings, specifically a section on focusing in on the district's strategic goals. And that is that making the boards, we find highly effective boards will spend 70% of their time discussing and having data presented to them on how are we making, what progress rather are we making on specific strategic goals. And so as a result of that, I've made a recommendation to the board, and they've requested this, that we provide or produce a revised, modified handbook for the board, which includes some very specific procedures that the board and the superintendent would use with each other, co-jointly, and they would work together where the superintendent and staff would first calendarize, identify, that is, the district strategic goals, the data that is to be collected to measure progress on those goals, to make that very clear and identifiable, to then calendarize when that data is going to come before the board and do that in advance so that the board and the public and the staff know when that's coming and when that data needs to be collected into a report, to agree upon the kinds of data that would come before the board so that they could be informed in their decision making, and then to try to agendize or modify their agenda somewhat to add additional time for the board to focus in fact, to make most of their board focused on asking that question, are we making progress on our strategic goals? So that was one of the major takeaways from the evaluation, and it's a major change in the board, how it will function, how it'll operate moving forward. And so again, I would congratulate the board for that level of commitment to do that kind of thing, to be an even better board than what you are now. The second one had to do with the board having a real commitment to ensure that everybody is being heard equally and that all ideas from all the various districts that the board seats represent, that they're being represented fairly. And so they're engaging in a series of slight changes in their practice, in their meetings as we move forward, where board members, everybody is encouraged to share their viewpoints, their constituents on all of the topics that come before the board. So that's another example of individual meeting practices that the board evaluation showed could use some development. And so again, that was, I would say that's the outcome of this evaluation, those two major takeaways. I would say there was other more minor things that the board is going to continue to work on. And I should also say that in part of this evaluation, in addition to the full board discussion that we had earlier today, each of the board members agreed to work with me prior to this and engage in a one-on-one coaching session where, again, I was very impressed at their willingness to be open about their own performance and to consider self-reflection and self-assessment. And I can tell you that each and every one of the board members took that very seriously and all of them have individual plans as well on how to be an even board member than they already are now.
Thank you, Dr. Ellsbury. Thank you for your time on doing this. And I also want to take the time to thank the board members as well for, as you said, taking this effort and truly analyzing ourselves. I think we are going to be much better for this. and I appreciate the efforts that's gone into it as well. CJ was part of our evaluation too, so I want to make sure to include
That's
him on
right.
that. Anything for Dr. Osbury?
I just thank you for your work. I mean, it has been eye-opening. It's fun looking at all this data and kind of getting a feel for, you think you're headed in one direction and then you get an outside set of eyes and it helps you refocus. And I definitely see the value in it. So thank you.
Great.
Yeah, I would just like to say that I feel like I'm a new board member, even though I'm not very new anymore. But I think that this is something that I've been needing as a board member and that we've been needing because we're a fairly new board. And so I think all of the information that we've learned so far and received so far has been great, and just looking forward to the future sessions.
Sure. Thank you so much. It's been fantastic. I look forward to working with you in the future here because, yeah, there's just stuff to work on. So thank you.
Thank you, sir. Safe travels home.
Thank you, everybody. Appreciate you.
Agenda item 3.03 is NASB NASB award nominations discussion. This is for possible action. Turn it over to you, Miss Susan.
Okay. Hopefully you still have the nomination sheets. And I'm going to propose that I'm sure you have looked them over, but you can look them over one more time. They're due to Rick by August 15th. So what I was thinking is if you have one, two, like whichever ones you want to nominate, that you write that and then send it to me by August 12th. And then I'll make sure that there aren't duplicates, and then I'll send them to Rick. I would rather have them be more a surprise, I guess, if you will. So that's what I'm proposing to do. Instead of going through each one in a meeting, saying people and moving on.
Teresa?
I
I
like
think
it.
that's a great idea. I love the, just having it as a surprise, and we can just have the opportunity to submit those to you. So Susan, that's a lot of extra work for you to take that on. So, but thank you. I think that'd be fun.
Great.
I'd like to throw a challenge out to the rest of the board too, is that everybody do at least one. Whatever it is you feel, there's got to be somebody or something somewhere that you could write something nice about. Let's everybody try and do at least one.
Thank you, Jeff. Brooke?
Yeah, I love the idea. I already threw 2 names out last meeting, so I'll take care of writing those up and sending them to Susan.
Josh?
Yeah, it's, I mean, awards are fantastic and I appreciate the idea, and it's great that we can just I like that better than previous. So I'll try and work on it between now and then.
I have one more idea. I think we submit these, see what happens, and if our people don't win, that they receive whatever we typed up about them, so that they can still know, hey, the board nominated me for this, and this is why. I think it would be good for them
Kind
to
of
hear.
treat it like a stars award
Yeah,
type thing.
or just even send it to them just so they know. Yeah,
Yeah.
make it more personal.
I-
However,
I will be happy to send those along. I can do that.
I just want to offer my assistance if there is someone that you know you want it to be a surprise, but if you would like some help in finding information out about that might be helpful or productive to a thorough nomination, and hey, what's going on with this person? How can we find out more and kind of fill that out a little more? I'd be happy to help as best I can.
Thank you.
Just
Thank you.
one more quick
Please go
point.
ahead.
It looks like we need at least 2 or more board member signatures on each one. So I guess when you get those, Susan, as the NASB, whatever alternate, I guess, if you want me to sign those after
Sure.
you've made that decision, just let me know, or if you need my help.
Great.
Okay.
I appreciate the suggestion. I'd like to suggest though a change in timeline. or the delegation of authority to our NASB reps, in that if there are some, for example, Administrator of the Year is up right now, we're allowed to nominate 2 administrators. However, if we nominate more than 3, I mean, more than 2 with the board, somebody's going to have to make that decision of who the 2 from our district are. And so I would suggest either we agendize this for the 5th and with the deadline of the 4th. And that way, if there are duplicates, Susan can say, yep, here are the duplicates that we have, or that we delegate the authority to Susan and Teresa to, if there are duplicates, or not duplicates, but if there are more than the allowed number, to allow them to read through the nomination form and make the decision. So that would be a suggestion that is now back before the board.
I'm fine with either.
I think it would be,
Volunteer you, Teresa.
I think if we want it to be a surprise, then we should probably not have it agendized.
Yeah.
So I think, Susan initially said, she'd be glad to look through them. And I guess maybe what we can do is, if it's okay with the board, Susan, if there's several, say we have 3 and we can only send 2, then you and I can collaborate and draw a name out of the hat if we have to, if they're all awesome, I guess, and save one for next year.
Yeah. That works too.
I'm fine with that.
terrific. I don't know that this necessarily needs direct formal board action. If anybody has an objection to that, let me know, but otherwise, I think it'll be kind of by acclamation. Susan and Teresa, we'll leave it up to you to best represent the board. Thank you.
Before we go on, just 2
Please.
quick notes. Maybe this actually resolved itself already, but there, for each page or each nomination, you do have to have at least, it says 2 or more board members must sign each one. So if Teresa and Susan are going to do that, then that's great. You got your 2. I don't know if it carries more weight if you get everyone to sign it or whatever, but it does have a place for signatures. And then just to clarify, so at last board meeting, I think, Susan, you requested this be agendized for August 5th. Is that no longer the case anymore? We don't need that for the August 5th
No,
meeting?
we don't.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, CJ. And yes, if there's an ability for us to sign them all, then I think that works great. Susan's original date was the 12th. That still gives 3 days to be able to have everybody sign them. I'm sure they can be sent out electronically. Hillary can email them to us or something, I'm sure, and we can get as many signatures as possible, because I would agree. I think the board signing them would be more meaningful than, not that the 2 of you are not strong enough to be able to represent us, but I think, yes, having all of us would, or as many of us as possible, would be great. Okay. Any further discussion on this item?
Of course, if you get them done earlier, you're welcome to send them in.
Hint, hint. Okay. Terrific. All right. Then with that, we will go to 3.04, review and discussion regarding comparative data before and after 4-day school week implementation. This is a non-action item. Mr. Anderson.
I'm gonna go around to that podium just so we can all just, you don't have to turn your head the whole time, okay? Hey, Brooke. She was doing good eye contact, so I said hello to her. Hi, everyone. So we've been talking about this for a little bit, and while I don't think I could have any presentation that's going to be totally comprehensive about all types of data, and some of it isn't even available yet. We kind of said we'd evaluate at the end of 2 years, and so want to go over some of that data, the stuff that we have right now, and kind of picked some data points. Not going to go too deep into analysis of all the star rate. There's an abundance of data online that we could look through, but just wanted to talk about things that kind of were points of interest when we made the decision, and try to reflect on those here with this. So yeah, we're about 2 years into it, and first thing I'll point to is this is an area that, or all of these areas are ones that we know from 2 years ago when we had a 5-day week, and then what last year's are. However, these are all items that are pulled from the state STAR accountability reports. And as you see the note at the bottom, last year's 24-25 academic year, while that data has been collected already, it is not reported out by the state until sometime in October. So we will have those and can be sure to give you kind of maybe through the superintendent report, I can show a third column of this stuff to how those things have progressed. But just to point out from the move from just that 5-day week to the first year of 4-day week, we saw an increase in roughly 3% of graduation rate, a reduction in about 3% of, or 2.5% of student chronic absenteeism. Bullying and cyberbullying incidents that resulted in suspension went down by close to half. We also had a slight uptick in teacher average daily attendance. So those were all pretty much relatively positive moves from those key indicators that are found. Again, those are all things that are pretty prevalent on the front when you go to the Nevada report card for each school and school district. So that's just some data to share with you there. I guess I can, does anyone have a question on any of that? All right, great. So we're gonna look at these four areas, kind of just briefly on each one, and of course we can engage in conversation as you see the need to. So we'll first go to some academic achievement, and specifically we're going to talk about academic achievement through the lens of the 2 board goals that we worked on roughly I guess no, it would have been 3 years ago, I think. 2 or 3 years ago, I can't remember. It's been a minute. But the first goal, I'll just need to read from PowerPoints, but I'm going to read it, was to increase the percentage of 2nd and 3rd grade students who are projected to be proficient in or advanced on the SBAC Language Arts Literacy Assessment by 3 points each year for the next 3 years, as measured by the Spring Map Growth Reading Assessment. I know at the time when we made that goal, it was like, this is really weird wording, but there's questions about, you know, how much value we put into the map versus the SBAC, whereas the map is a multi-point assessment throughout the year, and the SBAC is a one-time thing. But anyway, so what we looked at, again, just to point that out, is the number we're going off of or that we're paying attention to here, is this one right here, which is the projected proficiency was what we were looking at. And then just for information's sake, we showed how well those matched up with the actual SBAC scores. Also keeping in mind that while both 2nd and 3rd graders do take the map 3 times a year, only 3rd graders take the SBAC. So when we made that goal, we were sitting right here at this 31.9%. And so we were hoping to be by the next year, it was to go from 32 to 35, and round up if you want or don't, but it was in the range. That was our projected proficiency. And then this year, the projected proficiency actually went down. But as we do see, the actual SBAC proficiency rate was up. So for the spring 2025, we would have, that one should have been 38, and it was down, and we would, oh no, is that correct? Yeah, 38. So going into next year, we're supposed to be at 41%. And so we have some work to do, and we know that. And just for comparison's sake, just to point out, as you can see in this year, it was a 32% projected, but our kids finished in those 2 grade levels 5% percentage points better than that. The next year they were a percentage lower than that. And then again, even though this one was at 32.8, they finished 2 percentage points higher. So again, it is a predictor, and MAP they're very transparent about that. They say, this is our best guess based on how they're doing. But that's based off of the maps, and then here's the SBAC. So bar graph on the right to kind of show that in a different way. But still work to do on the language arts. And we fully anticipate that good implementation of the new resource you all approved at our last board meeting, Lexia, should have a positive impact on this. And we are excited to see how that helps.
CJ, if I may.
Yeah.
This is not a cohort following the second grade
No.
and third grade classes. This is a point in time for
Correct.
that grade level.
Yep.
Thank
Yep.
you.
So spring 23 was that year's second and third graders, and spring 24 would have been the previous year's first and second graders, and spring 25 would have been that first year's kindergarten and first graders. So yeah, it's not following the same kids through. It is just, and that's a difference in philosophy too on how you want to track that, right? I think if I remember the reasoning behind doing it this way is because of the concept of the read by grade 3 in Nevada, where we want to make sure our kids that by the time they get to third grade are on grade level, and how do we kind of, where are we going to put our emphasis, right? Knowing that you can't put emphasis everywhere on everybody. It's tough to do that. So as far as a board goal goes, that's why we went that way. And yes, it is different kids every year. Or at least half of the kids are different, right? Because the second became the third, and the third are now in fourth. So we're not tracking them from this data point anyway.
So I'm just noticing on the spring of 2023, the actual SBAC is 37.3%. And then when you come to spring of 2025, it's 34.7,
Mm-hmm.
which I know I didn't even think about that before, that it's a whole different group of kids. Do you guys have do you have any idea why that would be like the drop there?
Sorry, so which, can you say
So in
your,
spring of 2023,
Yeah.
they were at 37.3.
on the
Then
SBAC?
they
Yep.
went
Mhm.
down to 33.6, and then now they're at 34.7. Is there any, do you have any idea what would cause?
I mean, again, those are different groups of kids, right?
Yeah.
So that's,
Anything to do with like COVID or anything? I'm just wondering what.
no,
there's
if we were gonna
a
kind of
relationship
blame it
there.
on COVID, I would have expected those kids in the spring of 23 to probably be worse off because they were kindergarten first graders, second graders during that time, whereas this year's third graders, I guess they would still have been kindergartners at that time. So no, yeah, again, just, not trying to find excuses. It should be better than that. But again, keeping in mind that those are different kids. And as when we were talking about Lexia, over the last 2 years, we have had a significantly increased emphasis on the math curriculum and the implementation and the learner center framework and our work with SCIEI. And this is kind of was part of the impetus of hey, we're either seeing stagnation or just minor incremental moves, and we need to give some more attention. Because at one point when we instituted Wonders, it was wow, we saw all this great stuff, and when we go to the math one, you're going to see some pretty good indications. And so I think it's just sometimes you get in that mode of we're all in on this, we got to move that needle, and then you kind of lose attention to other places where it needs to be. And so trying to figure out that balance of make sure we give equal attention to both, because they're both pretty important. Other questions on the slide? I could get some feedback there. All right, so next slide looks a whole lot like that one does. This time, just a little bit of change in the goal. It was still the projected proficiency on SBAC math. Now we're in math, but instead of second and third grade, we are looking at the pooled 4th through 7th grade. And still with a goal of increasing that projected proficiency by 3% each year over the course of 3 years. So, started out the spring at 24, wanted it to be 27 by the next year. We were about a percent point shy, wanted it to be at 30% by this spring. And our kids were way above as far as their projected proficiency was supposed to be. So that's already well past the 33 that we wanted to be at spring of next year. However, being realistic, again, looking at projected versus actual scores, in spring of 23, they were up 3% over the projected. This one, they were 0.5% over projected. But this year, even though their projected proficiency was around 38, the actual was really only 29 and a half-ish, which is still about 2 percentage points higher than 2 years ago. But that's a pretty wide discrepancy from projected proficiency to actual performance. We've noticed kind of when we made these goals, we sort of said, yeah, like it's a pretty decent predictor. It can fluctuate. I'm not surprised when one's a 1, 2, 3 percentage points difference, because again, it is just predictive. But like an 8 percentage prediction error of 8% is quite a lot. Still improvement, not enough. And but as far as the goal goes, this is the goal right here, or this number was the goal. And it's surpassed next year's already, but given that the actual performance wasn't beyond that, not satisfied, and we're gonna keep pushing on the math. I'm not sure why, because like I said, we put a lot of efforts into math, and so to see those projected, the map results, it was like, hey, we're paying dividends, and so maybe it's just a matter of MAP versus SBAC. And I've always been a little low on SBAC versus MAP. I kind of tend to prefer MAP. I know some of you do too, and I know most teachers that I talk to do as well. For what it's worth, I think the state is probably on its way away from SBAC. They can't seem to agree on anything right now, but anyway, again, not trying to make excuses or anything. This is what the data says. So that's where we are.
On that comparison, do we take into account the kids who don't take the SBAC? Because everyone takes the MAP, right? But then we have kids who opt out of the SBAC, and could we see a difference there?
Yeah, you definitely could because the majority of your kids who, I shouldn't say the majority, that would be an unproven statement. But in my experience, all the kids, most of the kids who do opt out, or their families opt them out of the SBAC, they're not opting them out of the benchmark testing. It's more the state stuff that they're worried about, that summative test. And so yeah, that could definitely be a part of it, as you have some kids who are performing pretty well on the MAP test, but then when the time comes for the big one or whatever, they're not there. So yeah, could be.
CJ, before we move off of these, to be clear, and I appreciate that this is 4-day versus 5-day, but when these goals were created, these were not created specifically because we were going into a 4-day week. Okay.
Nope, they were not. Yeah, but I feel like performance over the course of 5-day versus 4-day is relevant. So when we look at the spring 23, that was the end of our 5-day. Then when we go into 24, now we're in 4-day, and of course this year, spring of 25 was also 4-day. So just trying to compare the two, but you're right. Yeah, those were created before, a little before, not much before, but before still. All right, other thoughts or questions? Okay, like I said, there's a bunch more, but most of it's not reported out and from the state until a few months from now. So we'll be sure to share with you again. We're gonna calendarize it. All right, financial impacts. And I don't have, you can feel free to ask if you want, like why, but I don't have the answer to, I might say, I don't know. But Cassie and others were very nice in putting these comparisons together on just how expenses have changed in various ways. So the first one here is utilities, and you can see every row is a year. And so the first 2 rows, FY22 and 23, were both under 5-day, and FY24 and 25 would be 4-day. So you can see some fluctuations. These are specifically for utilities. So we have water and sewer, garbage, and telephone. I think we have some more on subsequent slides.
Any indication from Cassie or from the building superintendents, et cetera, as to why we would see increases on, I mean, really any of this? I'm astounded that telephone went up 24% when we went from 5-day to 4-day. How do we reduce 20% of our staff time in the building, but yet our numbers go up that high? Any
I'm
ideas?
guessing the answer is mostly going to be rates.
It's gotta be rates. Phone bills don't change by how many days you use it.
Yeah, you still pay the phone company.
You're paying per month, so.
That was a silly question of mine. Thank you.
Yep. And likewise, even though there could be some difference, like you still, even though you're not in a building, the water's still on in there. The lights are, well, maybe the lights aren't on as much, but the heater, the air conditioning or whatever is still on. So got to keep those buildings at a certain temperature. So occupancy could change that, but you know, certain things are going to remain. And so most of those I would imagine just have to do with rate changes. Here's some more. We got bottled gas this time, natural gas, and electricity. So,
Some massive jumps in the power bill.
oops, sorry. Yeah, it's mostly,
Keep in mind that this also, on the natural gas side, is more apparent, but this was also when we lost geothermal. So that would have indicated a little bit on the electrical as
sometime.
well.
yeah, the jump in 22 to 23, again, those are both during 5-day years. It went up again in 24, but we had a significant, I mean, even though over the course of 3 years we're up, you would expect to be up 3 years later. So that 41% or 42 almost percent drop from last year or 2 years ago to last year was nice. And as far as the bottled gas, that went way down because we've got other buildings that have transitioned to natural gas. So and that could also explain it. You have a little bit of an inverse. You lose it this way in one place, but we have this kind in another place. Still need that energy.
Anecdotally, I think this past winter was also warmer than the previous winter, which is going to impact those two.
I think the electricity probably is indicative of having the lights not on 20% more than before, because that's one that is different when you don't have a building open a day of the week. Because a lot of those other things keep going, but if the lights are off, the lights are off. You're not having that charge, so that one went down. And then here's transportation expenses. We have the wages, the overtime, and the fuel.
I was one that was very concerned about the transportation department going from 5-day to 4-day. I'm astounded that the wages have continued to go up beyond what I would have thought would have been a standard increase. So Cody, I'm assuming these are not, does this take into account what was a normal increase? Or is the normal increase built into this?
So you can correct me if I'm wrong, Cody, but like, we have to remember that 2 years ago, when there was a negotiated 8.5% and 2.5%, that was 11%. And then the state also did the SB 231, which actually, from a percentage standpoint, increased your classified personnel greater, because we did a like a flat, was it a flat? It was flat rate, right? We did a flat rate for everybody. So, you know, if the number was, I can't remember what the number was, but if it was $1,500 as a percentage, that's a lot more of a percent for a bus driver than it is for a 20-year teacher. So.
Thank you for that clarification.
Yeah. And that matches right up there with that percent change of 15% in FY24, because this year was the second year of the SB 231 money and so that year FY24 was when it was the 8.5% raise and the institution of SB 231. So that I'm actually not surprised by that. Was that, yeah, pretty good? Okay. I was surprised. I mean, the cost of fuel hasn't really gone down, but I think these are areas where with the OT and the fuel prices, when you are driving fewer days than. But we seem to do our fair share of driving still on Fridays, and because throwing all the athletics events and other things like that. So we're constantly scrambling year round, it feels like, to fill up trips. And I mean, Cody and Ken and I, who all have our CDL and we still drive occasionally during the year, we get emails frequently throughout the year. Hey, can you drive Elko High's theater department or Spring Creek softball or whatever? So yeah, they're doing their best to keep it all going. So trips are still happening on the weekends. All right, from an HR standpoint, I think last meeting, it was either last meeting or 2 meetings ago, I gave an update on how the vacancies have reduced every year, and we're in a pretty good spot right now from that standpoint. But I want to talk about specifically the staff absence rates, because when we had this, kind of when the decision was made, there was this notion of like, hey, we're going to be paying attention, because one of the arguments from certain groups of people was, well, won't have to take Fridays off for whatever appointments, and any sort of, there was a whole lot of different points of argument for why they believe staff would be present more in a 4-day model as compared to the 5-day. So just a general improvement in fill rate, and I showed before the staff attendance, I think it went from about 87 or 88 to around 90. So that was a little better. These fill rates are referring to subs being able to fill in for staff when they are off. So we also saw an improvement there over those 2 years, and we had a couple of months that were pretty darn good. And we'll have the chart up here in a second. But January, April, and June were very good. But still some months that are tough to fill, and then others that are just typically pretty good anyway. So here are those. This is a fill rate by month and year. So that fill rate that means like in August of 22, that means that of all absences for teachers, 94% of them were filled subs. Not just teachers, but all positions requiring a sub. Is that correct? All positions, Guy? Okay. Go back to that then. All teachers certified. So as you look across, obviously keeping in mind that, from August of 22 to June of 23 is a year. So that would have been the 5-day. So as you look across, that's the improvement or not improvement from 5-day to 4-day. But as you look across pretty much every month, even if it decreased from last year to this year, it was still an improvement over the last year of 5-day. And then this one is, it's just organized differently. But there's multiple slides that it's attached there. You guys can look at it. I don't need to leave it on here for forever. But yeah, that's just broken down by quantities and how those numbers were determined. So questions for me or the loquacious Cody Krenka on absence fill rates or teacher vacancies or anything like that?
Do you happen to know on the fill rate, if it's not 100%, how much it costs us for each time it's not? I don't mean to put you on the spot. If you don't know, that's fine.
Yeah. Are there costs associated with if you don't fill it? Because I mean, usually what happens is you have
To
to.
pay a teacher their prep time or whatever.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. No, I don't think we have those numbers.
Okay.
Is that something you'd like us to
I was just
see if there's
curious
anything associated with it?
how much
I'm not sure
that
how easy it
costs.
would be to get that or not, because
That's fine.
yeah, not sure.
I was just curious because like the ones that are down like February, that's going to cost us a little more than
Right.
like August or something.
Yeah, and it just depends. Sometimes that fill rate won't necessarily result in someone having to give up their prep. Sometimes it's a disbursement of kids to other classes, or canceling of another. The canceling of something would result in someone having to give up their prep. Yeah.
because I don't think people realize that affects.
It does. Yep, for sure. All righty. Going to move on to some IT impacts, just a little bit here. It's had to result in quite a change of scheduling for our technicians. You know, we only have so many, and they used to spend a full day at least, you know, every school. So that's had to change a little bit because when you have the same number of technicians but fewer days to visit all the schools, you can't really necessarily do that. So combo of full and half day visits, and they've done a good job of just kind of feeling those needs out and really emphasizing the importance of utilizing the work order thing. Lots of times people just kind of struggle in silence with something, and I'll just wait till the tech guy gets here, and maybe you don't see him, maybe he doesn't know, and so really putting a lot of emphasis on making sure that happens so they can efficiently plan out their schedules. And yeah, sometimes people actually have more than they had before. Just depends on how that goes. But so yeah, our IT services they're still doing a great job. A really solid department, and very knowledgeable and doing a good job keeping up with the needs. But that is an area that's a little tough sometimes because you're trying to do the same amount of work in fewer days, and so yeah. And that's actually the extent of this. What I wanted to point out a couple more areas that I didn't get on the slides, but from a facilities standpoint, a couple of kind of anecdotal things. I don't have data to back it up, but anecdotally, we've drastically reduced the amount of overtime in our facilities department. And that's not just due to going 5-day to 4-day, but also an intentional effort to make being more efficient and not approving every little bit of overtime. One really great impact from a facility standpoint is when you are 5-day disrupting, you have to disrupt a building sometimes. If you need to shut the water off or if you need to do whatever, like sometimes you have to disrupt a school day to do that. Whereas when we know we can plan on, you know, having a certain types of maintenance or certain projects done on Fridays, it's been good for the facilities department to be able to do those things and not have to, you know, shut a wing down or plan around whatever in the middle of the school day or shut off the water or things like that. So Matt Stalkey reported that's been a positive impact there for them. Just one of those little things you didn't really, I mean, we sort of anticipated being able to do it, but it's been very helpful this year. And of course, helping and reducing the overtime as well, because if you can't do that Monday through Friday, you are by necessity doing it on a Saturday or Sunday, which is invariably going to be overtime. That's the extent of the data that I was able to provide for you today. A lot of, just, you know, I should have prefaced all this with thanking a lot of different, you know, basically all the directors and departments for compiling a bunch of this for me, and so I could present it to you. They're all working real hard, and we're seeing, as you saw, there's certain areas that we're seeing some improvements. I should have also said too, when we got to the finance part, I wanted to point out, as a reminder, you did not choose to go to a 4-day model for cost-saving measures. We anticipated some of those things would happen, and we saw some areas where they did or where they didn't. But in the end, that wasn't the primary purpose. We did it for community satisfaction and to fit other needs that we felt like it was just like the desire of the community, right? And so we're making progress in some areas and know we have work to do in others, and I'm glad we're making progress. Other questions?
I'm going to throw a couple at you.
Yeah.
When you brought up the the IT and half days.
Yeah.
I know that one of the other concerns that had been brought up was, I think, the school psychs. They were concerned with more visits at schools, or at least less time to be able to visit schools. Are you aware of any measurable impact on that?
You know, I don't think I'm knowledgeable enough to say exactly how that's gone. I know that it's a struggle from a time management standpoint to make sure we get all those get all of that done. First and foremost, it's our duty and responsibility to make sure those are federally required services we have to provide. And so it would be a heck of a lot easier if there were some more school psychs we could hire, because we've had open positions for school psychs for years now. And so it has been a challenge from a 4-day standpoint, but I would anecdotally say it was a problem before we moved to 4-day. We were already having to go 0 hour and be creative in how we got that caseload figured out. So they continue to be flexible, and we continue to find ways to, as best we can, to help fill those loads. The solution bit would be, though, if there were some more personnel that were qualified to do that. But yeah, it's continued to be a difficulty.
Okay. Similar question, only now going to IEPs, because we have some specialists at the district level that go to our sites to deal with, I shouldn't say deal with, I don't mean that to be a negative, but to address IEP issues. Has that also been experienced with that as far as the shortage of days versus hours?
The
that you're
school
aware of?
psychs are the ones that's because they are also involved in the IEPs. They're the ones that seem to have the tougher role to fill, because they have to be at almost all of them. Whereas the personnel that you're referring to, they're for very specific IEPs. And so that has not been, I don't want to undersell how hard they're working, but I have not heard as much concern from a standpoint of them being able to meet their role. And we also we do have an additional position that was allocated to the special services office. We have a compliance person over there, and she helps kind of manage those things and participate in those as well. And so they're finding ways to get it done.
Great. Last question, definitely putting you on the spot. Any reason to suggest that we should reconsider 4-day? Using the data that you've presented to me, I'm not seeing it, but is there something that,
No, and for full transparency, 2 years ago, I recommended we not do it, but we're doing it. And at that time, I also said, if we're going to do it, you don't want to be too hasty about anything. So I think 2 years is not nearly enough time to say, even if the data didn't look good at all, which I don't think that's the case. Even if that were the case, I would say, hey, we need to give it some time. We need to give people room to grow into something. And so I think there are definitely lots of bright spots there. Certainly still time to, or still more areas that we need to improve on. But no, my opinion is it would be hasty to suggest making a change back again. I think we give it some time and we see how things go.
terrific, thank you. I guess I lied. I do have one more. October 25 is when the state data comes out, generally, or at least somewhere in that area.
It's usually sometime mid-October.
Is there a reason that we would, I guess, is there any data point changes that would be relevant around April if we were to get 2 times a year an update like this? Or would it be better just to say, hey, you know what? How about you just give us an update every November, because you get the data in October?
Mm-hmm. I don't have an opinion on that. I think it's up to you guys when you want to get the data, and I'm excited to calendarize those things.
Work on the calendar. Great, thanks.
Yep.
Anything else for Mr. Anderson? We appreciate your time, sir. Thank you. And we'll let you get back to your seat, because 4.01 is the superintendent's report.
Oh, good. All right. Got a few things for you today. Sorry, I got logged out here. So first, I sent an email, but because it was to clarify for all of you, but because it was brought up as a comment in the board meeting, I just want to clarify for public as well, that regarding the secondary science curriculum quote, there were 5 items, 2 that had to do with ecology. And your first question was, do we offer an ecology class? And the answer is no, we don't have something called ecology, but we do have an AP Bio class that utilizes ecology resources. One of those ecology items was a 6-month subscription for an online thing, and we renegotiated that with them and said we don't need or want that. So let's kick that out of there. Not a huge savings comparatively, but whatever. If we don't think it's important to have, then every little bit helps. So that settled that. And then the other 3 items were all 3-year kit refill subscriptions. So those were for kits for science classes, I believe. They were 6th through 8th grade. And those, I kind of made a guess about why we would be doing that, and that was an accurate guess. And that guess was sometimes you might be oversold on how many kits and things and consumables that you need. We saw that with the adoption of Wonders about 8 or 9 years ago. When I was the principal in Wells, about 3 years after the implementation, we had just stacks and stacks of these books that we continued to use well after our 7 years were up. And schools would be like, hey, does anyone have any of these? And we pass them around, and they were helpful that way. But we found that the annual refill of all those things was often more than we actually needed. So the idea was that you do 3 years of refills. By that point, you're about midway through your 7-year cycle, and we can see to what extent we've been using those. How many surplus do we have already? Do we need to get more? And so 3 years down the road, we may find that we're going to need to order more of those, or we may find that we're going to make it through 5 years and we need a couple more years. But it was intentionally done to not spend a ton of money up front that we weren't even sure if we would want them for the entirety of the 7 years. So that's what happened there. All right. Let's see. I've got like a pretty fun thing to talk about. Or sorry, I've got some fun stuff to talk about, and then I'm going to get the not fun one out of the way real quick. I've been gone for a couple weeks, and one of the things I was gone to, it's my 3rd year doing it, and it's also in my role as one of Nevada's representatives to the National Association of Superintendents. And we do an advocacy conference every year in Washington, D.C. So about a week before we went to that conference, in fact, I believe it was on June 30th, there's an interesting thing that happens on July 1st every year, and that is you are now in a new fiscal year. And we anticipated at that point, because that is what always happens, is we should have got a bunch of money from federal disbursement for a bunch of title grants, basically, that I'm going to list out here for you in a second. And we found out the night before that wasn't going to be happening, that those were all frozen for the current administration and the Department of Education to do a programmatic review of those to see if they were being managed properly, et cetera. So they're doing internal review. That kind of turned the week upside down of what we'd be talking about in Washington, D.C., because AASA and the state organizations, we have our priorities of things we were going to talk about, but all of a sudden having millions of dollars, really billions across the country, but in Nevada, lots of millions, frozen causes an already low per pupil state and an already low Elko County School District budget, some deep concerns about what happens when that occurs. So that was, first of all, that was really the focus of the visit there. We talked about some other things that were pretty important, but the focus with talking with our senators and our 4 representatives was about their advocacy for getting that figured out and urging whoever they need to get those funds to, not us, but all school districts, because it's called the instability is really, really difficult and challenging and devastating in some cases. So I'm happy to report that all of them, bipartisan, all of the of our representatives and senators had already advocated on behalf of getting those funds, and we're constantly checking in to see where are we with this, how can we get them back, and in the meantime said we need feedback from districts. What is this doing to impact you? And so we as an association in Nevada are working really hard to try to make sure that all of that is made clear to our federal government and to the current administration to make sure that those funds get to us sooner than later. So just for way of information, and I'm certainly not as eloquent as maybe Cassie Stalkey or Megan Cox when talking about our grant situations, but I'm going to do my best to fill you in. So the funds that were frozen cover our 21st Century grant, which this year was to serve West Wendover Elementary, Sage Elementary, and Southside Elementary. So serving our 3 largest communities, and to the tune of, I think, somewhere around $500,000. And that 21st Century is after school, like essential after school programming for low poverty or high poverty schools, low socioeconomic schools. So that has been frozen. Title 1C migrant, Title 2A teacher and principal training and recruiting, Title 3, which is EL or English learner, the Title 3 immigrant funds, and the Title 4A academic achievement fund. So all of those were frozen, and essential programs that impacts for us, I mentioned 21st Century is the after school programming. It also impacts our Project Lead the Way programming, which is implemented at all of our middle schools and at Flagview. It is entirely what funded our recruitment, retention, and sign-on bonuses for our most outlying and difficult to fill school positions. So sorry, that was the retention and sign-on bonuses. The recruitment is how we paid for going to recruiting fairs and trying to find people from those, but also demonstrating need for our critical needs assignments and all that. It has impact on special services because of the EL, immigrant and migrant, and our digital coaching position with Sarah, who does such a great job, is also funded by that. So what we are doing in the meantime, like there's finger crossing, right, that it's going to get sorted out, but you can only cross your fingers so hard and for so long, and hope in one hand and whatever in the other, right? Like there's all these things you can do and just hope it gets better. But in the meantime, we are prioritizing what things absolutely we have to take care of through general fund, and we're prioritizing the use of residual because there are always residual funds, and those date back to FY24. So we have some FY24 residual, some FY25 to cover what we are able to. Thankfully, kind of a nightmare I've heard from a lot of people is there are districts all over the nation that have a lot of salaries wrapped up in these grants and in these title grants. And so we only have like 1.5 basically that are wrapped up into it. And so while it's not great to have to assign those to the general fund right now or to other weighted funds, we're doing that just to, because we got to pay these folks. Just because someone froze the funds doesn't mean that's their problem. So those are essential positions that we're going to fund through the general fund. Should that money come back, then great, we reassign it back over. But we have notified those schools with the 21st Century grant that for the immediate future, we just need to put a pause on that after school programming as essential as it is. We just don't, we can't sort that out on our own right now. So hopefully that works its way out by the time the school year starts, or at least close into the beginning of the school year. So that's the bad news. But the good news, or maybe not good news, but the positive there is there are a lot of people doing a lot of advocacy to try to get this back. There are states that are bringing up lawsuits. There's a lot going on to try to just unfreeze these funds and get them back to because what we're talking about is our most vulnerable populations, right? Like these are absolutely essential programs for kids everywhere. And so we desperately need those back. We're seeing what we can do in the meantime, but being proactive as well.
I could add to it a little just
Sure.
because that piqued something I'd watched earlier today. The Attorney General for the state of North Carolina, Jeff Jackson, is somebody actually I follow on TikTok because he's real good at talking about that. But their state is shorted, and it was an email that came the day before the funds were supposed to arrive, saying they're frozen. Their state's out 170 million. I was curious if you knew what our state
I want to say,
Total.
I don't remember for
But
sure.
it's a large
But I
number.
want to say it was about 65 or 68 million across the whole state. In our case, our portion of that looks like just under $1 million.
Yeah.
It's about 940,000 for us.
But what he had said though is that he and several other attorneys general from around the country are filing suit on that. And he's very confident that that's going to be something. He says it's flat out illegal what they did and that they're going to be able to get that rectified with the
Yeah,
courts.
they
So,
believe they violated something called the impoundment
Yeah.
clause or impoundment act or something like that. I have a great PowerPoint. I'd be happy to share with you all so you can kind of see through it. But yeah, there is a lot of confidence, but the judicial system can take a long time to process through, and we've got kids coming in to class in about 5 weeks, and so 4 to 5 weeks. So that taking all that time is not it's not promising for us. So yeah.
CJ on that.
Okay, I knew it was somewhere in the 60s. Yep, Nevada's on there. Yep.
No, that's good. Thank you for the information. Are any of these grants, specifically these title grants, funding mandated programs or positions? Federally mandated?
So
I guess what I'm getting at is I agree with you that these are the pupils that we definitely want to be able to support. But with that said, if we don't have the ability to support them, are we considering saying, yeah, this is federally mandated, we're not going to do it, sue us because you took away the funds?
So in most of these cases, so like the things that are federal, like IDEA is a federal, like you have to do that, and that's not frozen. I mean, it's woefully underfunded. It's not the 40% that they committed to 50 years ago. We're still at about 13%, and they're supposed to be at 40. So 50 years ago, but that wasn't the question. So these grants have kind of specific areas of allowability, right? And so the funds must go towards those populations. But just off the top of my head, no, none of them are like, you must use this money for this purpose. Now, where it is federally required is these funds, this is why it's impoundment, is these funds were determined by Congress in a different cycle, that these funds are allocated already for this year. And that's why the controversy right now. If we were in a budget setting cycle, then whatever, we could rant and rave all we want about it, but like, that's their prerogative to determine what the budget's going to be. But this is in mid-budget cycle, the funds that have already been committed to something and they're being frozen. And there are reasons why they can be frozen, financial ruin, or like there are reasons to do it, but a programmatic review because we don't trust you kind of thing isn't one of those allowable reasons. And so that's why there's the lawsuit talk and all that. So no, a lot of those programs, the majority, like again, we still have residual funding to try to carry those things on, but a lot of the programming we will have to just get rid of. We thankfully, and for some of these populations, we do still do have funding in certain areas from the state in weighted funds. Like we still get EL weighted funds from the state of Nevada, and so but it's just it's going to reduce our ability to do a lot of things. And again, I think about thankfully we our what are they called, the retention and sign-on bonuses, like we can kind of handle that. That's not it's not an exorbitant amount of money, right? And for a lot of us, for us in Elko and for a lot of the rural districts, it's not that these dollars amount to so much, but the problem is here we are trying to make headway on things, and we talk about the teacher shortage, and then you yank that stuff out from under you, right? You talk about the gaps in reading and literacy and math, and then we're going to take out these supports for those kids who don't speak English yet and who have unstable home lives and these challenges. And so it's increased accountability with decreased supports, which is just going to lead to frustration. And it doesn't align with expectations. You can't expect more and give less. At least that's what I think. Some people would argue differently, but so as I told every senator and congressperson, you know, we're going to still show up every day and do everything we can to help our kids and provide whatever supports we can to them. You're not going to have a teacher that says, oh, well, sorry, you know, I can't help you out there. Like they're still going to assist the kid, and we're all going to do whatever we can to help them. But as far as like funding a $500,000 21st century program, that's tough for us to just stand up on our own. And I'm not sure we're going to be able to do that. So really hopeful that these things eventually work themselves out. Yep. All right. So that was the downer. But with hope on the horizon, I want to share a few good things. I got an email just yesterday from Genevieve Demick, who is the FCCLA supervisor? No. What's the word I'm thinking of? Advisor? It's advisor, yeah.
Jamie
Advisor.
Demick?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, advisor.
She's the advisor. I just couldn't think of the word advisor. Thanks. She's the advisor for FCCLA at Spring Creek High School. They did a great job, and they represented Spring Creek High and the state of Nevada. So there are 18 students that went to the national level with awesome results, and I just wanted to share those with you. So two of the teams placed in the top 10 in the nation, which is a very small percentage of competitors nationwide do that. And they brought home 4 gold medals, 12 silver medals, and 2 bronze medals. So our national placements in the top 10 were Eve Valdez and Nyla Colgan and under chapter service project. So they were top 10 and they got gold. And then Delaney Hipwell and Addison Fuller in sustainability challenge were also top 10 in gold. The other medalists were Corbin Peck in professional presentation silver, JC Lindquist and Dreven Demick, sports nutrition silver, Mason Morris, Nisa Romo, and Grayson Demick under promote and publicize FCCLA silver, Vivian Morrison, Emma Morris, and Raylan Kemp focus on children silver, Jaden Ratazzi and Bryce Ferris food innovations silver, Aaron Gillespie repurpose and redesign silver, and Brinley Leduc and Addison Savage professional presentation bronze. In addition to our excellent students, Genevieve Demick was awarded the National Spirit of Advising Award. So I think she won the Nevada, I think she was nominated as the Nevada one, if I remember correctly, and she won the National Spirit of Advising Award. So it's a prestigious honor for advisors who to recognize exceptional commitment to student success, leadership development, and supporting the mission of FCCLA. So they did a great job, represented Spring Creek great, Elko County School District wonderfully, and brought national recognition to our community and to our state. So just showcasing the value of, I know we're all in on CTE here in Elko County, and we put a lot of eggs in that basket, but also the amazing opportunities that happen through participation in these career and tech student organizations. You know, they wanted me to not only inform you of that, but also thank you all for support of FCCLA and those programs that we have. So it's great news from them. Other great news coming out of Spring Creek. Well, I mean, could have been bad news, but this is a story I just got today and I was asked to share with you all to acknowledge. And whether we acknowledge this through a nomination for an award or we do something else, you all know, I think, Wade Pearson, who's the principal out at Spring Creek High. He would hate that I'm reading this, but Jesse Barr emailed me today to let me know that on behalf of their family, they wanted to express gratitude to Mr. Pearson. And this is, you know, he wasn't acting in his responsibility as a principal, but it's hard, as we know, as leaders, whether you're always kind of representing your school, right? And so Mr. Pearson, they wanted to thank him for his quick thinking, selfless action, and courage during an emergency. He noticed a fire starting at their house when they were gone, and he jumped the fence, extinguished the flames, and called them and prevented what probably would have been a house fire that would have destroyed their home. And so they were thankful that he was there in that moment. They said his actions speak volumes about his character, his sense of responsibility, and his commitment to the well-being of others. Wade's integrity and calm leadership reflect the very best of what we hope for in those who serve our schools and our community. As a neighbor and a role model to our students, Wade exemplifies the kind of moral leadership we admire and appreciate, and we are truly fortunate to have someone like him helping guide the future of our district. and she suggested we nominate him for something or recognize him in some way, and wanted to make sure you all knew about that amazing story. So, I mean, I wasn't surprised when I heard it because I know the kind of person that Mr. Pearson is. He will always jump in both feet, both hands, and do everything. Sometimes you have to tell him like, hey, you need to let somebody else do that because he just wants to be the one to help. And so, extremely proud of Wade for leading that community and being an example in that community. And then last two things real quick, just a couple of acknowledgements. I'm kicking myself a little bit. So you all have met Hillary multiple times, and I have neglected every time since she started working at our district to announce formally in one of our board meetings that Hillary Baker is the new assistant to the superintendent and the Board of Trustees, and we're really grateful to have her on board. And she's already having an amazing impact and brings a wealth of knowledge, professionalism, and a lot of knowledge as it pertains to open meeting law and from other positions she's been in. So she's been great so far, fitting right in. And my music and singing haven't run her off yet, so that's good. Good to have you here, Hillary. She told me it was too late to do that, but it's never too late. It's not too late. It's never too late. It's another song. All right, and then the other person that has been appointed since our last board meeting is Charles Pratt. You all know Charles, so we were sad to see Mac go, but that left a vacancy for a director of IT in Elko County School District, and Charles was selected for that role, and he's listening right now. And congratulations, Charles! And it's great to have you at the helm in that department, and already jumping in both feet and doing a great job and leading his staff. So that is the extent of my update. It took a long time today. I apologize. But if you have anything else, let me know.
Anything else for our superintendent? Okay, then we'll go into our NASB update for Trustee Neal, 5.01. And then if you'd like, after that, if there are no questions, you can just go into 5.02 and lead us off for board reports.
Okay. Not too much because you've already received the email. So just a reminder, there's 2 virtual workshops coming up. I think Hillary sent them to everybody, but so if you're interested in those, remember to sign up through Hillary. And that's all I have for NASB for right now. And I don't have anything else.
Okay, I'm going to just jump in briefly on the virtual side. I know that travel for us is often difficult, and the fact that we're getting the opportunity to do virtual, I think if we show more support for that, then that would hopefully indicate that yes, this is valuable. So whether it's our district or other rural districts, if you know of other trustees, you may want to encourage them. Please continue to offer virtual. Thank you. Mr. Jeff, we'll go to you for board report.
Well, not a whole lot to go out with this summer going on, but it was nice to see, what we've accomplished with our evaluation and going through that. And then the other thing I was actually going to bring up, it ended up being part of your report, but that with some interesting stuff going on with federal funding, and it's the first real impact that I've seen here locally so far with that. And so that's something to keep an eye on, but I hope what they're saying is true and that we can get those funds released sooner than later. So that's all I've got going forward.
Thanks, Jeff. Teresa?
I'm just going to say congratulations to Charles on leading our IT department. We've had a great IT department under Mac, and looking forward to having Charles at the helm as well.
Thank you, Brooke.
First, I'm going to apologize. I brought up policy JD80, and I know we were going to get together and go over that a little bit. I have finally had some time to make up some notes on maybe some possible revisions to that policy. So I'll be sharing those with you, Matt, and hopefully we can get that on the agenda soon. I think that's it.
Thank you, ma'am. Josh?
I don't have anything.
All right, perfect. Thank you all again for your support on the board governance. I think that was important, and I'm glad that we took that step to do that. To Jeff's point on impacts, I think, so I appreciate that yes, that is something that definitely impacted almost everyone. I think what people may not see is behind the scenes, particularly with nonprofits. The first freeze had a chilling effect on all donors, because what ended up happening is, as it was variable, we don't know what's happening day to day. Donors have stopped doing the donations that they've done on, I shouldn't say stopped, many have stopped because they want to make sure that operations continue. And so for the Elko Senior Center, we are in the midst of trying to expand. And what should have been a fairly easy donation request, or at least a campaign to raise funds to purchase new land, turned into a 2-year projection. And in reality, we may be unsuccessful in trying to do that because we just don't have the donor base there, because people aren't investing in the future. They're trying to keep doors open today. So, so this is real impacts. I recognize that there are many reasons why the administration is doing what they're doing. The intent being trying to keep more money locally instead of shipping it off to the federal government. What that means, though, is that locally, we have to step up and support our local school district, our local nonprofits. We have to support that. And it may be a year or two before we see the money in our pockets, but the needs are now. So I'll get off my soapbox there. I just wanted to throw that out there. 2 things that the community can do to help our community. Well, we don't have a local blood drive area or a blood drive organization. However, Vitalent comes in and they service our area for blood. There are 2 blood drives, one of them at Spring Creek High School this Thursday, and another one in 2 weeks on Thursday, the 31st of July. The one on the 31st is kind of the big one. It's the Battle of the Badges. So if you want to support your law enforcement or emergency medical personnel, or your fire prevention folks, like Mr. Pearson perhaps, then you're welcome to go ahead and give blood there. And Vitalent is the organization you want to go to. With that, I am finished. And
Can I add one more thing?
please.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Um,
too.
Matt was Volunteer of the Year in Spring Creek, so we should acknowledge that as well.
It's not a fine, is it? Other organizations I'm in have a fine for that. So
No,
thank
we
you.
don't find it.
I appreciate that. And yes, I'm humbly honored that they selected me. Thank you. Dr. Josh.
I did want to, I should have started with Stuff the Bus, which is started, which is donations for the schools, goes to the community and schools. Ignite Life is a drop-off point, but one of many. Find that the banner is found throughout the community online. So we encourage you to donate there. They've expanded the list. I'm sure there's something you can find in your closet or at the local dollar store to help donate. So we appreciate all the donations there. It's usually pretty successful. So there's a lot more businesses that are help sponsor it, not just us, but it has been something we've been a part of for close to a decade now. So, but please donate for Stuff the Bus.
Terrific. Thank you. 6.01 is approval of the accounts payable. This is for action.
Move to approve the accounts payable.
Second.
Oh, sorry.
All right, we've got a couple seconds. Discussion and/or disclosures of record.
I will disclose that I have a family member who works for Wells Rural Electric, but I won't be abstaining from voting.
I will also disclose that I have a family member who works for Wells Rural Electric, but I will not be abstaining either.
All righty, further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Chair votes aye as well. Motion passes. 6.02 is receipt of bank reconciliations. This is a non-action item. Any concerns or questions from the board? All right,
Received.
received. 7.01 is the final opportunity for input from the public. Going once, going twice. I see none. We will then adjourn the meeting. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you in a few weeks.